Okay, so today we're going to run through CAPPS, which is our capital project progressing system. We've built this software tool add-on to P6 quite a few years ago, and it was really at client requests because they were struggling with updating. So I'm going to do the whole presentation. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm coming to you from Calgary. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. And I'm going to run through the CAPS version, both the intro and the actual detailed software. Now, before we jump in, I wanted to ask a quick question on how do you do your updating? How do you currently do your updating? So we generally have, you can go ahead and answer, and I'll share the results with whoever wanted to do, go ahead and answer. So we have a variety of different ways that our clients do updating. We put most of them in the questions. So meetings, Excel files, XCRs from contractors, emails, and some still don't even update. So it's not that often, but we do get some that don't do any updating at all. So I'll share that with the people who are able to go ahead and answer. You'll see it's quite a mixed bag, and it's still pretty common that we've got a variety of updating methodologies. So the struggle can really be that when you're trying to do strong project management, you're trying to get everyone on the same page, make sure the updating comes together. But often what we're finding is the projects are getting more and more complicated. You might have joint ventures, you might have very phased project with lots of complexity, more technology, makes it harder to coordinate. And of course, that means the schedules are much more important to running the projects, but it also means updating the schedules can become more challenging as well, especially if you have multiple contractors, some who may not, be that strong on project management. They may be all over the world, in which case getting together to do updates could be challenging with time zones. And then just people using different software can be a real challenge. So the scheduling team has to try and accommodate all that and keep the schedules moving ahead. And that's not always easy to do. And of course, you want to make sure that you're getting the updates done in a timely manner. So I think more and more people are getting better at doing their updates more often. And I'm going to ask, I might as well go ahead and ask that question. How often do you do your updates? So it used to be that a monthly update was pretty common. In the world that we live in now, people want things more often, faster. We're all about instant gratification. So getting updates done more often, like weekly, is really great, especially on a large capital project. And most of you were able to answer said weekly, which is really good. Daily would be amazing. It's not that common on a capital project, unless you have integration. Integration can definitely streamline your ability to do updates. But it used to be that we were doing updates once a month if you were lucky, and it could take you up to 2 weeks by the time you got the data in, got it reviewed, got it approved, especially if you're doing any cost and resourcing, in which case you were always out of date with your updates. So the idea of getting more and more streamlined is hugely important. That way you can do better forecasting and hopefully you can stay ahead of any challenges. So streamlining is really important. That's why we've got so many updating tools that Emerald has put together. Because you want to stay in front of any impacts. You want to make sure that you're identifying any impacts so that you can, of course, figure out whether something needs to change so you can mitigate the impacts that are taking place. Let me ask another quick question, and then I'll get into a bit more detail on the software. So how long do you find that you do spend doing updates? Okay. I think this question varies, of course. It really truly depends on the complexity of your project, and how big the team is. And it can certainly take, what I'm seeing is hours and days, weeks. No one's answering that, which is good. But that used to be pretty common, that by the time you got everything in, you got it reviewed, approved to publish, it could certainly take quite a bit of time, up to even 2 weeks was pretty normal. So let's jump in and talk about how CAPS works, and then I'll run through how and show you some examples, live examples of using the software. So CAPS can be deployed within your environment or a hybrid. It could be in the cloud, and your environment can be inside your company's firewalls, or it can be fully deployed up in the cloud. Okay, so we have clients with a variety of different deployment methods. So the software, I'm going to show it to you in a minute, is web-based. So you log into a URL, so you don't have to install anything on your computer. You're going to see that it's a tabular grid that we've put together, not only of tasks, but resources, expenses, and steps. And it's secure. So in the sense that you deploy the user through the P6 administration itself. So it's going to adhere to that security. And this way, your team can self-serve their own activities as they need to, as they get some time to do some updates. So it takes the onus of updating off of just the schedulers once a week in a big panic with a lot of overtime, and it spreads out the updating so that the person closest to the work could do the updates, submit them, either to be approved within CAPS or just approved in P6. And we have both methods, so whatever makes most sense for your team can be deployed. And then if there's something that's not okay with any activities, you can reject it and hold it back until it's resubmitted. So we also have the ability to fill in whether you need a deviation or a change order, and start to communicate that way from the app to the people approving, either in P6 or within CAPS itself. And then what we tried to do was take best advantage of what P6 already has in it, what most schedulers are already doing with codes, user-defined fields, indicators, so that you're really just using CAPS to help streamline the updates. You're not using it as a whole other reporting engine. It's very much focused just on getting the updates in quickly. Okay, so I'm going to jump in and I'm going to run through CAPS. First, I'm going to start in P6. And in P6, what we really are taking advantage of is what you probably already do already, with responsibilities on activities, a vendor and crew, a discipline type coding, so that you've got some filtering capability as to who is going to do the updates. And then inside of P6, we've got approvals that we can review. So we're really using what you're doing already in P6, the layouts, the views, if you're using the web, and filtering by dates with look aheads and coding. So we're trying to just use what you're familiar with already, just to make CAPS a lightweight updating tool. Okay, so let me jump over and go into taking a look at the software. Let's just see. Let me make sure I choose the right thing. Okay, hopefully this comes up right. I am going into P6. Shannon, Donna, tell me if you're seeing my P6 screen.
Right now it's still black. It looks like it might still be coming, Nicole.
Okay. I may have done it wrong too. Let me just see. Okay, let me just see. Maybe I did it wrong. Let me try again. Okay, that's strange. Let me just see here. I'm going to have to try again. I'm not sure why it's not letting me pick it properly. Let me see if I start in let me start in CAPPS to see if that's working. It's not letting me choose my whole monitor for some reason. Let me just see. Is that coming up? It looks like it, right?
That's coming up, yes.
Okay. Okay, so let me just see. Does this, yeah, why is it not? Sorry, guys, I don't know why it's not letting me pick P6. It's not letting me pick P6. Why? Okay, well, let me go ahead and start in, how am I going to do this? I can't throw P6. Why is it going black? Let me just try putting P6 in this other window. Let me see if that will work. It might look absolutely horrible though. Let me at least try it. Sorry, guys. This is really strange. Okay. Okay. This will work at least for this. Is it really small, Shannon?
It's pretty narrow, but
Yeah,
it'll
it's
work.
okay. So, okay, good point. Let me just try. Sorry for this technical problem. Let me change that display and I'll make it not landscape or, yeah, portrait. I'll flip it to landscape.
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay, except for me, I can't see it. I'll just have to physically fix it, but at least this will work. Is it too small or is it not too bad?
It looks good on my screen.
Okay, okay, okay. That's very strange. It wasn't letting me choose it. Anyway, we're over that. Okay, so let me run through P6. So with CAPPS, we're using the P6 projects and we're allowing you to update. Now, let me explain the methodology we use. So we wanted to make sure that you could update one project or many projects as needed, again, depending on your structure and who does what sort of updating. So what I'm trying to show you there is I have 4 projects. All 4 of those in this example are going to be updated by different people, possibly, and then the approver is going to be this approver, this EAI-PM approver. But the updates can be done by anybody, and they're going to submit them to approving if you want to use this inside of CAPPS. Otherwise, they'll get submitted into P6, and then the schedulers inside P6 can do the approving. Okay, so I'm going to show you a bit of both. So the idea here is more than one project can feed CAPPS in one at any given time. Now, I'm flipping over to activities. So I've got those 4 projects open and I've got activities. And let me just bring this over so you can see. And I've got some coding on the activity. So this is letting you know who we're expecting to submit the updates. Okay, so you can have one or many people doing the updates within one project. It's totally up to you. Who's expected to approve it? Okay, so this is coming from the system. Let me explain that better. These are project codes, okay? Or, so this works if you're one person doing each of these roles. Now, that's not always the case. In some projects, you may have different people, different crew leads, different discipline leads who are responsible for updating different pieces of the project. So that's where these activity codes would come into play. Okay, so you can use either method or you can mix and match. And that would control who gets to see and update a variety of activities. Okay, so you can either use these project codes or you can get into a more granular approach using activity codes. Now, even from there, a lot of our clients tag who's responsible to do the work. So in this case, I've tagged it as vendor, so who's going to deliver the work, and a crew for the vendor or discipline lead. Okay, so I've got these two very important codes to help me also filter, group and sort, and so on in CAPPS as well as in P6, so that you can identify and filter and then run through a meeting, let's say, to do your updates and so on. Okay, so that's how this can work. Okay, now I actually moved P6 into special monitor. It's not much bigger than a tablet, so why don't I go ahead and put CAPPS in that monitor as well, and you'll see how that works in a smaller scale than my large monitor. But okay. How's that looking? Is it too small, Shannon, or is it okay?
It looks good for me.
Okay. So let me run through what you're seeing on this screen with CAPPS. So I logged in as Nicole J. Nicole J is going to do some of the updates, and she's going to submit the updates to EAI PM to review and approve or reject or give me feedback on the updates. So let me explain what you're seeing across these different tabs. So we have in TAPS the ability to update activities, so tasks. We've got the ability to update resources, expenses, steps. So those are pretty much our updating tabs. Predecessors and successors are there for information, so you cannot edit those, but someone who wants to understand kind of the impacts, these can be helpful tabs to have available. And then the submitting tab where the approvals will take place are in this deviation request / approval tab. Now, inside of this tab, we try and give you some info about the submissions, and I'll go into detail and explain that in a minute. Now, not every single client uses all these tabs, so it's very much dependent on the data that you want someone using CAPPS to do updating. So, for example, if you have an integrated system, you may get all your resource information from that, in which case you can turn that tab off. That's why we have this last tab here. It's a configuration tab. So it's kind of where we set up which tabs we want to show, and it also allows us to save any changes we do to the grids inside of those tabs. Okay, so right now I'm looking at all the tabs, but perhaps my updating is strictly going to be on tasks. If that's the case, you can just create a layout that only looks at the task tab, and it will turn off or hide all the others. Okay, so you can make it as detailed or as simplistic as makes sense for your team. So let's start on a simple example. So what I'm looking at here is I've got activities that need to get updated. And let's just say I'm going to do an update just for my Engineering X group. Okay, so that could be in a meeting. Maybe I've got a webinar or a Zoom meeting scheduled with Eng X. Maybe they pre-did the updates and they're just waiting for us to review them. Okay, so you could do this many different ways. So I can filter on any of these columns. So in this case, this vendor code that I showed you, or crew, could be very helpful for pre-filtering. I might also want to pre-filter the activities. If I scroll down, let me just go ahead and scroll down. You can see in this case, I've got 2 pages, more than one anyway, so a page and a half really, of activities from those 4 projects that Engineering X is supposed to be doing. So, I can have them all on screen if I wish, or I can certainly do a look ahead filter. Okay, so most groups would probably do some sort of look ahead, and is before typically, and then a look ahead would be maybe we could go 2-3 months, just depending on how you want to do it, and go ahead and apply that. Okay, so then you can get the list of activities that Engineering X is supposed to be doing in the next few months, and you can certainly then go ahead and let me just go in here. Also, you can sort them by the start date if you wish. Okay, so there's a variety of different ways you might want to get the CAPPS layout set up so you can start doing your updates. So what we're seeing on this screen is we actually have a few that have been updated. So this field here, this BP, business process state, is trying to let you know that this has been submitted. It hasn't been approved yet. That's what the little I is letting you know. Because maybe I did a few updates yesterday and I did a few the day before, and the approver may only approve them once a week, for example. Okay, so this lets me know what's been submitted, not approved as of yet, and submitted, but hey, this one got rejected. Okay, so somebody looked at this and didn't like the update, and a note would normally be there, so I know I got to redo this. Okay, so that's the field that helps you know kind of what's going on with your submissions. Let's touch on a few more of the fields that we're looking at here. So we also have a little identifier here to let you know which activities are critical. Now, Engineering X seems to have a lot of critical activities, which is not that surprising when you're at the beginning of a project. All the engineering work is going to be important, and if they're the main engineering company, it wouldn't be all that surprising to see all these critical tasks. So let's go ahead and do a very simple update. Okay, so we've got a few activities that have started in the last few weeks, have been submitted. So I can update the percent completes and the remaining durations on these activities that have already started. I can also start some additional activities. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So this one already started, and so did this one. And normally what we do is we want to update how many days are left. Now it depends on your updating methodology, but most of our clients use remaining duration. So this one was a remaining duration of 25 days. So let's go ahead and say we've made some progress on that. Actually, why don't we go ahead and, yeah, that's a good one. That's fine. Well, whoops, I should have put days. So 10 days left. So you just type in 10D. Since I didn't put the D, it interprets it as hours per day, like P6. So the easy way is just to type in 10 and a D, and then you're off to the races. It understands to do it in days. Sorry, what was this one? So this one was 60 days, and we can go ahead and update that one as well. And let's just say it's getting even worse. So although we started, oops, sorry, I forgot the D again, 7D, we can go ahead and forecast we're going to go over. Okay. Now this percent complete is a rough calculation on screen. When you submit it to P6, P6 will do the full-blown calculation and the forecasting off of that. Okay, so this is a rough calculation on screen. So not only did we start a few days late, which was my note from my previous update, we are running into slowdowns. Okay, so I can put a note. Now that's a note that goes in a user-defined field. Now, if you feel like you need a note that's more elaborate. We also activate a notebook. So I can put in a I can put in a longer note as well. So you have both options depending. Okay, so this was my update last time. I can go ahead and put another update in. Oops. And that will go into the notebooks. Okay, so we have both choices. It's totally up to you how you want to use it. And you can mix and match as you saw that I did there. So I'm going to have two notes on that. So that's a very some simple updates. So I'm going to go ahead and submit those into P6. Now, just before I do that, I'm going to go into P6 and I'm going to go to my submitting reviewing layout so you can see how this can work for you. Okay. So I'm going to go to the reviewing and approving layout. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Now, this is one of these activities that have already been submitted. So it's basically an update. The two are going to be updates on two activities that I already updated in the past. Okay, so in my case, it was today, but it could have been yesterday or the day before. So you'll get the latest and greatest update. So we'll start with a very simple example. I'll go ahead and save the progress, and it will run through and push that over. Yeah, I don't know why this is doing this. This is from my house. It keeps going to this screen. Let me go back. Just doing that weird thing. And then it submits it and it goes into P6. So I'm just going to go ahead and refresh. So those updates are on these activities that are already in here. And they're going to get more information from this latest and greatest update. Let me just refresh it again. Okay, and I'm going to go back and reopen CAPPS. Sorry, it's just misbehaving here. Something to do with my router at my house. It does this strange thing. So I'll just go back. And we can review what we submitted. And just touch on what the updates were. Okay. Okay, so let's just go back to that simple layout that we used just for this very first update. Okay, so the first activity is 10 and activity, I think it was 10 and 40. Let me go ahead and get that filter. I forgot to save the layout. That's my mistake. I should have saved the layout. Let me just go back to that and get that on the screen. Is before, and I think I did 2 months. Both of those updates were within the May period, but I think I did. Yeah. Okay. So that's better. So I'm seeing the ones that we had submitted, and so we've got this one, and I think I did an update on this rejected one, which you're going to see it doesn't go in to P6 because of the rejection. So let's take a look at this one. So activity 10. Okay. So there are 2 activity 10s. I think it was project 3. Let me just double check that. Yeah. So it's this project here. So project 3. Okay, perfect. Okay, so here's the activity. So what we did was a very basic update. We did an update on the activity, the status, the start date. We left alone. We updated the remaining duration, and we didn't get into any resources and so on. Okay, so the information for the submitter is here. Sorry, scrolled over a little too far. So here's the submitter information. And the note, I don't think I updated the note on that particular one. The note that we would update, plus the notebooks will also be available. Okay. And I think the notebook was on one of these others. Yeah, here we go. So that's where the notebook update will go into. And once it's approved and accepted, that's where the notes will go into. My P6 is doing something a little weird here. It's clearing the field when I go on the record. So we'll just have to bear with me on that. So that's a very simple update. Now, if I'm okay with the information, so let's go through the information that we're taking a look at. So let me scroll over a little more. So what we have here is the start date that CAPPS is submitted. This is the start date currently in P6. So until I approve this, it won't overwrite that. Okay, so it's sort of in a holding bucket, if you will, waiting until I say, yeah, these updates are okay. So this is where the scheduler is doing the approving. They're going to look at this information and see if they're happy with it. And then they can put it through. So it's all about using layouts. So very simple and things that your team is already used to doing. Okay, so you have a CAPPS prepared layout with the fields that you're having the team update. So in my case, we were also getting them to update the duration, the remaining duration. So I can see the remaining duration from CAPPS, what's physically right in P6 at the moment, right beside it. And we can say, yeah, that looks all right. It's not great. We're not happy that we're having an overrun, but it is what it is. Okay. That helps you also know where things are going off the rail, and you can have layouts for that as well. So you can work through whether they've suspended, resumed. I didn't in this example, whether they've put an expected finish in for you, and so on. Okay. So if you're okay with the updates, as an approver in P6, what you can do is you can go ahead and rerun and accept the updates into the system with this little go button. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to set them all to go, and I'll save that into P6 and refresh, and it will run through and make those updates. Basically, this is approving them. And but normally you would probably reschedule, which I probably should have done. I should have updated my data date, should have rescheduled, and then approved these in. And depending on how many updates you have, it'll take some amount of time. I have very few, so it shouldn't take too long. So what we do is we've got a combo of our P6 calculator software in the back end that does these pushes between the fields, and it should run through and say pass in a second here. Oh, I don't know, it's taking so long. Let's just give it another second. Hopefully it's not my internet. Okay, well, I'll still press this one more time and see. Okay, that's good. That's what we want to see. So what we're seeing here is that it was able to run through and move all the data that was submitted, and we're good to go. Now, let's just say they try to change the actual start date. For example, they try to take it off. Okay, that is something we don't allow them to do. Okay, so that is something that would throw an error message and let you as the scheduler know that that's not acceptable. Now, you should see it in the columns in advance, and there's filters that you can put on to look at that in advance. But that's something that could cause what would be an error message, okay? Would still move all the other data, just flagging to the scheduler that, hey, they tried to remove the actual start date, which we don't allow them to do. Okay? Out of the box. That's the way we've designed it. Okay, so let me show you what happens then. So now instead of let me just scroll over. So now the dates are not just sitting in, oh, that doesn't look like it did it, does it? Interesting. Let me just refresh it. Perhaps I didn't refresh it. Yeah, something looks weird there. So this should have put that date in there. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. And it should accept the updates and off you go. Okay. Let me go into a more complicated update. So another updating you might do is a full-blown, not just activities, but resources, steps, expenses, and so on. Let's run through that scenario. So I go ahead and choose that layout and I apply it, and those tabs will be available. Now, within those tabs, you have control over the fields that you're including in your update, okay? So if you don't want certain fields to be available for them to update, like suspend and resume, for example, you may not want to use those fields. So if that's the case, you can turn those off. And then they're off the screen, so the user would not update those, okay? And then if there are other fields that you do want, you can add those in. Okay. Now this is configurable, meaning this crew and this vendor, these are codes that I have in my database, so we can configure it to add fields that you want from your database, including activity codes and including user-defined fields. Okay, so that's configurable in the system. And that just changes the screen. And if you're happy with your change, you just have to go over here and save that layout. So it gets all the changes that you made on every one of these tabs into that layout, including your filters. As you see, I've got the filter here for the start as well as the vendor and any other changes that you might make. So even the order of these columns, you can control them. Okay, so if you want to have a different order, it's easy to do, drag and drop and just save that layout. And you can get to the user the fields that you want them to do the updating for. Okay. Now, let's take a look at this activity that we were working on. This one here, this activity that was started on April 23rd. We're partway through that activity, and we have resources, expenses, and steps on that activity. So if I want to update the resources, I can navigate over to it. Oops. This monitor is doing some weird things. I can navigate over to it. So let me just show you that. Okay, so that's what these little hyperlinks are for. I'll just close that. There we go. These little hyperlinks take you to that exact activity in the other one of these tabs. Okay. Now, let me explain that a little bit better. And I'll run through this activity. I think I've done all the updates on it. Either of these two, I think they're good as examples. So I went to the resources. Let me go back to the resources. Now you'll notice that my layout is quite different. And we designed that intentionally to allow you to filter differently on each one of these tabs, because the user who's using the tabs may have a different intention. Okay, so that's why those hyperlinks are really handy, because they take you exactly to the right activity. So it looks like, although we did start this activity, not both resources have been updated as of yet. So I can go ahead and do that and make some updates on here. So it looks like we have 450 hours to be performed on this one. Let's go ahead and say we did 250. The computer will try to make the estimate to complete, except I had previously overwritten that estimate to complete, which kind of takes the calculation away because I'm in an overrun. So in this case, I can go ahead and put in what my estimate to complete is. Okay, so maybe I'm finished with that resource. So we're done. This percent complete is, again, a rough estimate in the screen here of percent completes. They may vary a little bit once you submit and you do all the calculations within P6. So it's a good rough number here. We also had, this one has 600 hours. We've done 100. Well, maybe we've done half of that. And again, we can go ahead and forecast that down. Okay, so it was trying to hold the 100 plus the 600, the 700. It's trying to hold that, but I can definitely reforecast that as appropriate. So maybe I'm going to do a little bit better on this one too. Okay, so you can go ahead and do those updates. Now I can update additional resources if I wish, or I can certainly navigate to expenses, which it takes me to. So here are my expenses, and it looks like I've done some updating on that already on expenses, 50 and 75. So I can leave those, or I could update those. And again, it's going to try to hold the previous forecast amount. Not so it overrides the budget in that case because I'm in an overrun situation. So it was trying to hold the forecast estimate at completion on the screen, and then I can continue the updating. Okay, so in this case, I may be doing an overrun. Okay, so you can see it's letting you know kind of the percentage based on the estimate at completion that we're at. Okay, and then I can do steps updating as well. So you can see I've done some step updating already on this, and I've got some notes from the previous updates, and I can do some additional updating as well. Okay. And then I can just continue doing more updating as need be. Now, if I start an activity, depending on my role might be to update the activity's resourcing. So we can also do updating directly on the start date in the resource expense step windows as well. Okay, so in this case, if I'm starting it already, I'm quite in advance of the original plan date, so I can go ahead and start that, and then I can go ahead and start doing some actual updating in here as well. Okay, so that step prevents you from having to go back to the task every time you want to get something in progress. And you can see the little icon here letting you know that they have started. Okay. Now, when you see some icons missing, this is just letting you know that there are no expenses, there are no steps. Okay, so you can kind of have a mixed bag of updating methods. Okay. Now, one of our clients, they deploy this to their engineering leads, and they give them the task and steps. They don't update the resource and expenses. Those come from their accounting integration. And then this lets the engineering lead update the steps, which will allow us to understand physical percent complete. Okay. So again, you can kind of mix and match it as appropriate for your environment. So once I've got those updates in, I can go ahead and save those updates, and they'll again be pushed to two places, to the reviewer and approver slot, as well as into P6. Okay. So you can see the update timestamp here. So I've just got the number, the hour of the day. So this is my time zone, of course. And I don't know why it's clearing that. Okay, there, that's better. It was clearing the row for some reason. It's some weird thing it's doing in my P6 here today. So those updates have come in on those two activities. And again, I can take a look at them. Okay, so we've got some more information here. So this is the activity that was supposed to start in June, but we started it today. So that's letting us know that we're trending better on that start date. And it's just giving us the number of hours variance. Okay, so those kind of go together. If a variance is good, it's a positive number, just like in P6 and a start. If it's not so good, as we see here, it's negative and a warning or a stop sign, depending on how far behind it is, okay, which is also configurable. And we got some more information here on what we sent in. So in terms of our labor, one of our activities was doing better on labor, and we can look at the resources in detail. So I'll go on that one. Let's look at the resources in detail. So we can see here that we've got the 300 and 250 and the remaining units with the estimate to complete coming in. Those are going to fire in when I accept the updates, okay? Same holds true for expenses. Let me scroll over a little more. So let's take a look at expenses. So we can look at the expense and what we did on updating at the expense. So we've got an at completion of 125,000, and actually this layout is not so great. I need the CAPPS fields, but you get the idea. The CAPPS fields will populate these fields when I accept it. Okay, so we know we are on an overrun in that particular example. Okay, and then we can look at the steps as well. So let me go ahead and look at the steps. So we have these updates, two updates in addition on this last round of updating. So this is going to be 100% on this one. This one is going to go from 0 to 20. And if I had edited any of the notes, they would come here in here. Okay. So if I'm happy with these different updates that I've received, I can go ahead and again approve it. Okay. Now let me show you the approving in CAPPS itself. Oh, good, it didn't do that weird thing with the firewall. I can also log in as an approver if you want to, okay? This is not mandatory, this is optional. So the approver is set up to receive the activities, and you can see the ones that have been submitted. So I can go ahead and filter on those. If my role is just an approver, I can go ahead and look at just the ones submitted. And you can see there's additional ones than the ones I updated in this last round. So this approver is looking at fabrication, looking at the EPCMs and so on, okay? Now some of these you can see have a check mark. That lets you know that they have been approved and there are no new updates waiting for approval. So I don't even necessarily have to look at those. Okay, so I can certainly turn those off and just look at the ones that have been submitted. This rejected one doesn't look like they fixed it up yet. And I can then walk through and look at the various tabs and go ahead and approve them. And I can also look at the specifics or the summary. Oops, sorry, let me just make this a little wider. The summary of what's going on in the review and approving tab. Sorry, it's just not opening up. It's because it's a little smaller screen. Okay, there we go. That's better. So I can also just focus on the ones that have been submitted. And again, I can also just focus specifically on the ones that I need to take a look at. Okay. Again, we've got a lot of these little flags and variances to help the approver know kind of whether something looks like it's going okay or whether we've got some overruns. Okay, so that's helpful for the approver inside of CAPPS to take a look at. And if we want them to do the approvals, that's their little button here, approve. Okay, so if I'm happy with these, I can approve them. And if I'm not happy with them, you can see their rejection button here as well. Okay, so that's the other way that you can work these. Again, it depends on your specifics on who you want to have approve them. And if I'm happy with them, I can save those, and those go in to P6 with into those approver slots. So not just in a submitter, we also have approver slots. But the final word is always with the P6 people. Okay, so this is like a pre-approval, really, if you will. So you can see that the PM did approve a few of these, and again, that helps me know whether they've been pre-vetted or not. As a scheduler, you don't always know whether the forecasting and all that is correct. So this is where you could take advantage of someone who's a little more familiar with the work scope. Okay. Final approval, though, is always for the scheduler to do, just like I showed you before, where we just hit this go button when we're happy with it. We could reject, and our reject would override the approvals as well. So we have those options as well. So I can go ahead and save that and refresh it and wait for it to run through and pass. So essentially take all those updates and put them into the real P6 fields. Okay, so I think I gave you a flavor of how it works and the different kinds of updates that we have available to us inside of the system. And the way that you can essentially change the screen and only give to the particular person that's going to do the updates the fields that are important to you. Okay, so not every one of our clients uses all of those different tabs, so it's really up to you to use it the way that makes sense. Okay, so I think I'll stay in the software, but I'll just see if there's any questions as of yet. Okay, doesn't look like anyone has any questions so far. If you do, go ahead. Feel free just to chat them in, and then I can tackle those questions while I'm still in the software. Let's just see if there's any questions in the other rooms. No. Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully that means that it's understandable and it's clear. Hopefully it doesn't mean you didn't understand what I was showing you. But really the intent here is to make the updating easier. Okay, well, I'll flip back to the presentation and we can run through some case studies real quick and just to give some ideas of how some of our clients are using the software. And then certainly if there are any questions that come up, go ahead and chat them in and I'll tackle them. Yeah, so we have a variety of different flavors of this CAPPS tool being used. And let's touch on some of the examples. So the first client that we developed software for was Petro-Canada. So that's an oil refinery here in Alberta. They're now part of Suncor Energy. Now, what they wanted done was they wanted to be able to give the PMs and their engineering leads the ability to do the updates. They, at any given time, they had 50 to 100 small projects on the go at the plant. And the schedulers were overwhelmed dealing with turnaround planning for big, large turnarounds coming up, the small capital projects that were coming up, and also the day-to-day maintenance. So the schedulers were pretty swamped. So what they wanted was for their PMs and their engineering leads to help with the capital projects updating. So at the time when they started with this tool, they needed the updates. So schedule updates, dates, percent completes. They needed those every 2 weeks. And then they needed the costs updated once a month. So that's how they did it. So this made a huge difference in their ability to get the updates in. And what they really found was the benefit was they could understand what was going on in engineering much better. Okay, because engineering is much harder for people to get a feel for because you can't see and touch it all the time. Whereas on the job site, you can. So that really improved their issue management through engineering. And they were able to actually get the updates done every week, which was a big win. And of course, just understanding whether there were any busts for deliveries and offsite tracking. So it was a big benefit to their projects and mitigating issues. So another example that we have is an example of a large EPCM company doing the updates on a major program. They have over 100, they're close to 150 PMs doing all the updates. And they do them at minimum every 2 weeks. Prior to that, they were doing them, it was taking 2 to 3 weeks to get the updates in. And they only had 4 schedulers doing it. And they needed to hit very tight deadlines for cost reporting. So by deploying to their PMs to do the updates, they're down to every week and every 2 weeks for the updates. And now the costs are not taking 4 weeks to get through the system. So the costs are now getting done within a week. So the response time has improved considerably. The last one I wanted to share with you is an older one that used, I mentioned it already, they use the steps to do the physical percent complete updating on their engineering team. So this was very important for them because they were really finding it hard to get a real idea of how many weeks were really left on some of the engineering packages. So they went from not being able to really understand it and missing the bulk of their deadlines. Like we're talking about 80 to 90% missing of their deadlines to improving that and delivering the packages much quicker. So on average, the package were delivered 5 days faster because they had a better idea on the forecasting and a better idea of where the real problems were. Okay, so the steps transparency with physical percent complete was a big game changer for them. And just to brag a little bit, our step updating, I think, is the easiest updating in any of the different options out there in the marketplace. Okay, even the web, it's not that easy to do the updates and steps. So really, the benefits to our clients are some of the things you probably would guess. It's very easy. It's not very hard to use this tool. A person doesn't need to be trained up on P6. And you can get them a layout and they can work in that very easily with minimal training. So the big feedback there is they can, at the end of the day, they can get a few updates in and they can just hold them there. They don't have, although they approve it and they save it and you might see it in P6, they haven't released it. So it's not the end of the world. You can wait till Friday to do your full blown approvals and get them into P6. Okay. So it makes it much easier. It's more collaborative. So now the engineers can get the updates in and they don't need to be P6 experts. So that's been a big win. And it just kind of lightens the load. Many hands make light work. It's that sort of philosophy on getting the updates in. As you saw, it's pretty simple to work with. It's also a pretty cost-effective tool. So we use the P6 web service software, which is quite a bit cheaper than a full-blown P6 license. And The extra piece is, of course, the cost of the software, which it is our CAPS month. So if you're looking like, if this looks like it's a good fit for your team, certainly reach out this month because we'll help you lock in some good pricing. But in terms of the benefit, the cost, just being able to see issues in advance saved a lot of cost, and the visibility and understanding the real earn value, especially if you're using the physical percent complete, it can be a real game changer. I don't know if any of you have experienced that your packages in engineering get to 80% and then they stall out and they stay at 80, they stay at 80, they stay at 80. So this, using the steps with physical percent completes and certain key milestone type deliverables really can be a game changer. Okay, so if you're struggling with that, definitely reach out because it makes step updating actually viable and very useful, very valuable. Um, and then on resources, so you saw you can get your resource updating and your forecasting, especially if you're not in an integrated system. And if you want to understand resource loads from people who would never submit into your own timesheets, for example, this is a very easy way to get a rough idea on the effort being expended. Okay, good. So I think I've touched on everything, and still doesn't look like anyone has any questions. So not a problem. It is a pretty simple software. So hopefully you see some ideas on how you could make updating easier within your group. So I'll go ahead and start wrapping up. If you do have any questions, throw them in and I'll tackle them. So thanks for attending. I'm sure quite a few know about Emerald, but if you don't, this CAPS tool is just one of many tools that we have to enhance the Primavera product line. So not only for P6, but also for Unifier and PCM. If any of you are still using PCM, we've got PCM tools as well, and the A Connects and the Prime. So definitely reach out if you're interested in finding out how we focus on streamlining, integrations, making sure we're taking best advantage of technology so that your team is focused on managing the project rather than integrations and things that really are time consuming and not necessarily the biggest value add. So I have here Donna's contact info. So she's our local APAC rep. I have Mary Lynn on here because sometimes she does this webinar, but certainly reach out to Nicole J at Emerald if you want to reach out to me. You can reach out through our website. We've got some case studies and other videos. Or, of course, reach out to Donna. She's in that same time zone as probably most of you are anyway. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining and putting up with a few little technical blips. Hopefully you got an understanding of how the tool could be used. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to stay on to tackle them. Okay. Thanks so much. I'll stop the recording and I'll stay on for another minute if anyone does have any questions they want to put in the chat. Thank you.